Hello, pod smashers of the internet, and welcome to another episode of
80-bit pod smash,
where gaming goes to grab a beer
or whiskey,
or a whiskey.
Cheers! We're your hosts, Penguin and Termite. I am Penguin.
I am Termite, and we are a weekly video game podcast, smashing together ideas that you care about with video games.
Huzzah! And tonight we are talking about the Streisand Effect. It is a measurable. It's a thing that has happened in both pop culture and just in how do you put it? It's something that's known to happen, and it's a social effect, right? It's a social effect where basically usually a larger, more powerful organization tries to either like PR or tries to just like, try to exert their rights in a way that is overstepping their boundaries in either case, bordering on censorship. They're trying to control the narrative, and it backfires. So the Streisand Effect is a backfiring effect, and we're going to talk about it because it happens in video games more than you might think. And it's named after Barbra Streisand, and we'll talk about why when we get to our main topic, but we will get there eventually. In the meantime, we are where gaming goes to grab a beer. So what are you drinking tonight?
I am once again dipping into my whiskey of the single malt whiskey, the Matsui, the Mizunara cask. I can't say Japanese words correctly. From the Kurayoshi distillery in Japan. Japanese whiskey I purchased in Hawaii. It's absolutely wonderful. It might be the best whiskey I've ever had in my life. I've had some other Japanese whiskeys before that are really, really good. And they usually have the sake like rice kind of aftertones. It's more like a white wine. It has that like almost sweet kind of sort of floral like notes to it. This is straight up. You can tell it's single malt whiskey because it's made from the same kind of things that American whiskeys are made from, but this is out of Japan. So it's the old brewery since 1910 in Japan. It's unblended, fairly sweet, aged aroma, tickles the nose with a smooth yet rich, lingering aftertaste. This masterpiece, carefully crafted with heart and passion, is brought to proof with high-quality natural spring water from Mount Dyson in order to maintain the integrity of the whiskey. No artificial coloring is added, unchill filtered, distilled in Japan. So I wish this would last forever. You need to have this. Everyone who's listening to the show needs to have this.
Yep. I believe it. I am drinking a gift from our mutual friend Ryan. This was a thank you for ripping the Band-Aid off of everybody's D&D ambitions. It was one of those things where I knew everybody had wanted to play for a while. Everybody. What I mean by that is I knew I had a lot of people in my life who had said to me, I would love to play, but I don't want to DM. And I was always of the mind where I was like, I feel too inexperienced to DM, but I want to DM. Anyways, I ripped the Band-Aid off, got everybody started, and because of that, and because he's enjoying it so much, our friend Ryan gifted me with a bottle of Jack. I did say to him, I cannot show favoritism and like give you a magic item for that. Wink, wink. No extra gold for you, young man. Wink, wink. I'm just kidding. I didn't give him any extra. I gave him a point of inspiration, but for something completely different than the whiskey. So it was just a genuine, well-received gift. He has accused me of being an a-hole, though, and constantly insinuating that he's just trying to bribe me. He's like, nothing dampens a genuine, heartfelt gift more than accusations of bribery.
Bribe me. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Good job, Dan.
So like,
that's
so now now I know it bothers him, and so it's hard for me not to do that. So that's I told him, I was like, it is a character flaw. It is. I understand it's a character flaw. I will try to do better. That's all I can do. That's all I can do. So. Anyways, it's wonderful. It's Jack Daniel's like select single malt select or whatever, single barrel. That's what it is. Single barrel select. So it's good.
Ooh.
Good stuff. Solid whiskey. So I can't tell you like my last impressions of it though, because I got pretty drunk off it last time. So
perfect. That's what you should do.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, what do you think about it now? What's the whiskey taste like?
Yeah. Here we go. Hold on. Oh, it's smooth. That's my takeaway because I just had some Buffalo Trace the other night.
That's
for the first time in a long time, and it was like whoo. Whereas this is like it's very drinkable. It's got a very
wait. Who got you Buffalo Trace? Where'd that come from?
Me and Ryan and our friend Matt, both of whom have had episodes on our show before, so that's how it's relevant. we're hanging out the other night, and
Who got it? Who had it?
Matt brought the Buffalo Trace. He had already had it, and he had drank most of it, so we finished it off for him, and it was, but it's like it's good. It's good
so
for
good.
different reasons, but this is very drinkable. It's great for the podcast because I can just take sips on it. It's not like occasionally. So very floral. It's got kind of like a floral or sweet, almost like honey kind of taste to it as well. So I like that.
Ooh.
I like that a lot as well because I'm a sweet tooth.
I never had the Jack Daniel's single barrel. I might go pick me up a bottle of that. That's why we talk about it on the show, right? Recommendations.
Absolutely, for sure.
Let's do it.
All right. So, anything you want to talk about since we didn't really get to do a lot?
I think a little update of what do you learn, right? We both kind of switched up some games. Like it's still backlog season. It's nothing really big new has hit that we're super obsessed with.
It's good timing because I've been knee deep in D&D world still. For the last month, but I found a lull enough that I was able to really invest some time into Ghostwire Tokyo. I haven't platinumed it yet, so I'm still working on some like odd chore-y kind of trophy hunting, but the narrative is done really good. I actually really, and I mean that was kind of what reviewers were saying, was like the story is really compelling, the open world activities are kind of boring, but which I would agree with, but like the story was compelling. I found it very, very well done, and not the craziest, not the best, not the most insightful, but like still like solid, and they definitely had like some depth there to it, which I appreciated as well. So what I moved on to is I've got a couple of things in my chamber right now. The only thing I've actually played since finishing it is I fired up Outer Wilds for the first time. Really interesting. Don't know what my long-term impressions are going to be yet, but right now, just like an hour, I played like an hour of it, and I was like, this is, I can see why it's like highly well reviewed and very well received, because it is very different for a game. Even for its kind of similarities to roguelikes, it's still like it may be the possibly truest successor to like Majora's Mask's time loop than anything else, I think. Anyways, Outer Wilds is great. I just got a copy of, I'm very pleased and excited about this. For my birthday, I got a copy of Disco Elysium for the PS4, but obviously with the PS5 upgrades included. So my parents got me that off my wish list. It was a genuine surprise because I curated my list at the beginning of June, and then like kind of like I was like, okay, these are the things I know I'll want. I know I'll be happy if I get these things, and then I just forgot about it. Didn't look at it. Didn't check it. To even like sometimes I'll be like, oh, my birthday's coming up. I'll check to see what people might get me. I didn't do any of that, so I just genuinely opened it up. I was like, a game, it's going to be off my wish list. I hope this goes well, because I don't remember last time I actually curated it. Disco Elysium, perfect. It's the perfect game that I wouldn't necessarily go out of my way to buy myself, but I'm dying to get my hands on it. So that will be fired up sometime soon. I don't know when. I'm
excited to hear about what you have to say about that, because I've heard so many good things about
I've
Disco
heard nothing
Elysium.
but good things about Disco Elysium. Exactly. Yeah. So
I platinumed finally Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge, which was a new game. I talked about like backlog season. I know big hits. It's not a big game. The game is absolutely incredible. It is a 10 out of 10 in my book. It's flawless. Nice. It's absolutely perfect. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from the 90s at its finest. Everything about the game is great. All the levels are awesome. The enemies, the variations, the 7 characters you can choose from, each have their own unique movesets, their own abilities. All the bosses are different from 1 through 16 of all of the levels. I just can't wax eloquently more about what that game is. And even though I've platinumed it, I still haven't installed. I'm dying to play with friends. I cannot I've only ever played.
That's a good. That's like that game has an impact on you. I mean, that was Elden Ring for me, where it's like I've platinumed this, but I still want to play it. Yeah, that's how you know it's money. Bank.
It's so good, and I would love to play it with friends. I know there's a Turtles Night coming up sometime with Jimothy and T-Bone, other people. We're all going to play it, so I can't wait for that. And I've also moved on to the newly released Sonic Origins, and the reason why I even want to bring this up is because I played through. I've never actually finished Sonic 1 that I can remember all the way through. So the trophy list for Sonic Origins is really easy, and I love it. It's play through all the games in their new anniversary mode. Anniversary mode gives you infinite lives, and you collect coins that you can spend in a museum to like unlock all of the things. So the trophies are unlock all the things and then like play all the things, whatever. So you have infinite lives, which means when you die, you just start off at the latest checkpoint instead of getting a game over and have to start the whole game over it. So I never finished Sonic 1 in my memory ever, and I did with Origins, and it was great. Sonic 2, of course, is paramount to my nostalgia and my history with gaming in general. So I love Sonic 2. And then Sonic 3 happened. Well, I also finished Sonic CD, but that's not what I want to talk about. Sonic CD is good, but 3. Some new feelings for nostalgic games. Sonic 3 hit me in the feels for the nostalgia. And I didn't realize how much of that game I had memorized. That game is seared into my brain from endless replays as a child. And I didn't realize it until this playthrough, because this is the first time that Sonic 3 and Knuckles have been ported to any modern consoles because of like licensing issues. So the most recent port was from the GameCube era back in 2002 on the collection. And so I haven't really gave Sonic 3 an honest playthrough except for like dabbling on my Sega Genesis occasionally until now. And I'm just like here for all of it. I absolutely adore Sonic 3. It's by far my favorite Sonic game, and I didn't realize how much I adore and loved it until this playthrough with Sonic Origins. However, there's a caveat. It is confirmed that Michael Jackson worked on the songs for levels 4, 5, and 6 of that game, and it's Casino Night, Ice Cap Zone, and the launch base zones. And the music that they could not get, because Sega did not have the rights to it, they had to replace the music, was awful. And I died inside. The levels kicked up and I wanted the music, and it was like, nope, here's this other like cheap rendition of some prototype song. It's the best they could do. I get it, but man, the music, it's heartbreaking. So I'm currently sitting through like Sonic and Knuckles right now. There's also this really cool feature with the bonus levels that you used to have like one try, and if you failed, you'd be dumped back out into the main world, and so you wouldn't have a chance to try it again. Now you can retry them with spending coins. So that's kind of nice to like get the Chaos Emeralds, get Super Sonic. I'm thoroughly enjoying Sonic Origins. I'll probably platinum it before June is over, and that will put me at 13 platinums for the year, which is 1 plus the 2 platinums a month of my goal for 2022. So it's keeping me on track. I can't wait. So that's what I'm playing right now. And hot on the heels of all of that is the PlayStation Plus. We talked about this a couple episodes ago, where I have huge access to huge stuff, like crazy amounts of games, one of which is Outer Wilds. So now that's kind of on my list of like, I can play this risk-free. But The Artful Escape is an indie game that was released on Game Pass not too long ago, and I played it on Xbox and loved it. Didn't finish it because I didn't get trophies, so I couldn't stay attached. But now it's on PlayStation. It's on PlayStation Plus. It cost me nothing, and it's like a 3-hour platinum. So I'm going to hit that early in July, hopefully before I leave again. And I'll have my 14 platinums for 2022, early July, on track.
Wow.
Love it. I'm excited. So what are you playing? Lots of games. Games abound.
Yeah, awesome. All right, well, we love abounding games, but that may be our favorite thing, but
80-bit Pod Smash is my favorite thing.
80-bit Pod Smash is our favorite thing.
Favorite things.
It's a segment of our show where we, share something with you that we're excited about, something that we're digging, something that we are just like has thrilled us or intrigued us or made us provoked our thoughts. And we're hoping that you might go out and find your next favorite thing after hearing about what ours. That's hard to say.
Wow. Get it out.
I'll start. My favorite thing is my, again, birthday just happened. Again, knee deep in D&D. All these things will thematically come together. Talk about my absolute favorite thing this week. Again, courtesy of my friend Ryan. Got it for my birthday. He had told me how he hasn't started Stranger Things 4 yet, but he has a t-shirt from the season, which is the Hellfire Club. So the Hellfire. Yeah. So you're familiar with it. For those who aren't in Stranger Things, again, heavily D&D influenced, the characters are actually part of a D&D group called the Hellfire Club, which is DM'd by one of my new favorite characters in the season, who is their dungeon master, and he is basically like the heavy metal bard archetype and is going to, I believe, do some cool BA bard heavy metal things in the last 2 episodes. So I was like, man, I would love one of those t-shirts. And then Ryan was showing off his, and I was like, oh, I'm so jealous. So he got me a t-shirt, and so I was wearing it like all last night and much of today. I'm not wearing it now because it needed a wash, but I was just like, over the moon. I was like, yes, I feel connected to all the things I love right now. So
that's amazing.
That is that. Yeah. So that's my favorite thing.
And my favorite thing is over the weekend, we had like an impromptu, organic, no one really planned it, pool party. We just like someone
sweet.
goes up to the pool and is like, hey, I'm bringing my kid up to the pool. And then suddenly there's 6 families and all their kids playing and everyone's having a blast. And it required 0 planning ahead, no mental weight of execution, no driving. It's just everyone just descended upon the pool. And
That's
it was
awesome.
perfect weather and the water of the pool was great. And it was phenomenal. I got to relax. Alex, my wife, she came home with our other son and brought him up to the pool. And like the 4 of us were just like, it was like 5 o'clock on like a Tuesday. So this is a Tuesday night, just living here. We have like a pool party.
Nice.
And then suddenly it's like, what are we all doing for food? And then someone orders pizza and it's like, what do you want? And we'll Venmo you. And like everyone's going in on pizza and there's like a pizza event happening on someone's porch and everyone's running around. It's just like this awesome place to be. And I love that it took 0 effort to get off the ground. So, and it's a pool party. Like who doesn't love a pool party, right? So that's my favorite thing. It's kind of simple. Doesn't require a lot of voice. I can't really talk more about other than that's what happened. So yeah, It was great. That's my favorite thing.
Awesome. I missed pool parties, right? Like I haven't done it forever. I had some friends who used to have a pool up in Harrisonburg, up in Elkton, but they're the same guys who actually run the Elkton Brewing Company. A great family, and they had a pool. And yeah, they would have like 4th of July pool parties and stuff. And it was always so much fun. And I just, old now and have kids. And so my next pool party will be with a bunch of like 5-year-olds probably. But
yep.
so that's cool. That's awesome. So glad that you still have that in that, or that you have that in that community. You always frequently talk about like the get-togethers you have up there as your favorite things. So for an extrovert
we just walk from our house. It's like throw towels, get the kids dressed in trunks and swimsuits, and then throw towels in a beach bag and walk to the pool. Like there's no driving. You know, I emphasize that a lot. There's no like planning ahead. It's just like, oh, it's 3 o'clock. Dinner's not till 6. Yeah, let's go. And like, boom, we're at the pool for the evening, and it just evolves into who knows what. It's great.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that leads us to our final segment, which is DLC. DLC stands for downloadable content. It is a segment of our show where we have a conversation that is to get the gears turning, to get the prime of the pump. Sometimes it's related to our main topic, sometimes it's not. But in any case, it's almost always a conversation you probably have never had about video games before. So we're talking about the Streisand Effect. And again, we will talk about what the Streisand Effect is. It is inspired by an event that happened around Barbra Streisand. Therefore, it got its name. So I want to take that idea of naming an effect of something that someone has done, and I want to take that and apply it to a video game character. So in the same way that the Streisand Effect is what we're talking about tonight, what would be the blank effect, and then insert blank with a video game character? So what about like a video game character's behavior would be like, oh, this is and I'm going to take the example from you so that you can't use it. What would the Solid Snake effect be, right? It would be like when you successfully try to hide from someone in something that you know you're going to get caught in, and it just turns out to be like, so something simple like a box where you're like, they're 100% going to find me in here, and then they don't, and you're like, that's the Solid Snake effect. Boom, I just Solid Snake effected. So what is another example of like a video game effect? So something that like a character does so much, or rather so infamously or famously, that it's like, oh, this is the blank effect.
I want to riff off of Max Payne. I want to riff off Max Payne.
Okay.
The Max Payne effect. You go so fast that the whole game slows down.
Ooh,
so
yeah.
You turn it on its head. It actually, like, you do the Max Payne effect, and I guess you would move as slow as bullet time presents you being, but everyone else is still moving at regular speed. So like it does the opposite, where like, I'm going to dodge this bullet, but actually you just jump and you're like moving in ridiculously slow motion, and you would become a bullet sponge because it'd be easy to hit.
That's a cool thing, because you could take that like metaphorical idea and apply it to like the video game industry even, and say like, when a game comes out that's ahead of its time, it's moving faster, and it takes forever for the video game industry to catch up to what it did. So it has to be like well ahead of its time, right? You have to be talking about like the Nintendo, like what we were talking about with the Game Boy Advance and how the link cables would be like the predecessor to, you know, what we would see with the Switch. That was Nintendo having the Max Payne effect, right? Where it's moving faster and it takes forever for the industry to catch up. That I think that's good. That's a good one. I like, gosh, I had another one, and now you've blown it out of the water because that was such a good one. So I'm gonna say the what's her name? The Abbey Effect. So the Abbey Effect from Last of Us Part 2, Abby from Last of Us Part 2. I don't think they ever gave her last name, did they? But the Abbey Effect is a character, like when you have a character or you have an idea or you have something that gets leaked, and we're actually going to talk about this in this episode, but like when you have something that gets leaked and so much hate and vitriol goes towards that thing, how could they possibly do this? Another example of this would be like the Wind Waker, right? Like Wind Waker, where it's like, oh, the images, the early images, the leaked images, whatever they are. It's like the first impression is one that is so bad, but then ends up becoming super beloved because it's pulled off excellently, right? Like that. And I wouldn't say that Abby is 100% beloved, but like The Last of Us Part 2 is beloved, and so many people credit like the writing, the performance of Abby as being a big part of why it succeeds. And so that's the we'll name it after her. We'll call it the Abbey Effect, even though, of course, Wind Waker did it before. We're going to say that I think it's easier to say the Abbey Effect than the Wind Waker effect, right? So, and also like naming it after a person is more fun. So there's my example. We want to hear what your versions of the Streisand Effect are for video games. I'm not going to lie, dude. I just pulled that one out of my butt. That one just like
nice
came to me.
Same
like
with
a bolt
Max
of
Payne
lightning,
too. Like I just looked
right
over,
when it
like,
was. Yeah, so,
boom.
All right, that's it.
There's
yeah,
Max Payne on my shelf. See, this is
we
why I have a library of games. Right, this is why intellectual people sit in libraries of books, and that's where their desk is centered around.
Inspired, right?
Because you have the books surrounding you. The intelligence is there,
right? Just sometimes, you know, I've read this. Is what it implies. In your case, I've played this. It is like, I need a moment of inspiration. I'm going to look upon my shelf, and your eye is drawn towards the title. Then it's like, yes, all I need to see is the title to realize what I have learned from it. Yes, in this thing, I learned this or whatever. Yeah. No, you're not wrong. It's the thing. Yep. Right. Well, then what I meant was that entire DLC I pulled out of my butt. Like I had no idea what I was going to say.
I got you.
And
cool.
I just sort of like,
right. Nice.
Yeah, that's what I was. Yeah.
I thought it was just your answer. Oh, nice.
No. I mean, that too.
Yeah.
So whatever. I almost went with like the Ellie effect, but I couldn't like think of an exact. But it's kind of the opposite, where it's like this character that's beloved going through. But then I was like, you know what, the Abbey effect works better because that kind of thing happens all the time. So, all right, cool. Streisand Effect.
So where can you find? You can find us.
Yes.
Give us your effects.
Give us yours. Yeah.
Tell us all about your Cole McGrath effects from Infamous over at 80bitpodsmash.com, 80bit Podsmash. It's our landing website with links to all of our social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, Twitch, Twitter, Discord. Those are the social medias. We're all there. You can find those links all at 80bit Podsmash. Interact with us. Tell us your thoughts, comments, questions, concerns, and ideas. I butchered the sacred symbols monologue. It doesn't matter. Flattery is the greatest form of
mimicry.
Intimacy.
Intimatize. Poop is the greatest form of excrement.
There you go. Sure. Sacred symbols is not poop. 80-bit Podsmash is not poop.
No. Whoa. I was just talking about poop. My son asked me today if his sister could eat his poop, and I said, no, that is not a question a human being should ask another human being
ever.
So I mean, he's 3, so like he gets a pass. But like from now on, let's learn that that's not a question that ever should be ever asked. So.
Welcome to parenting life, and you can also find links to all of our other audio platforms if you're coming by way of like YouTube or Twitch or something and you want to hear us in your car or on your phone. Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Google Play, Apple Podcasts. We're everywhere where you want us to be on through our RSS feed. You can throw that into any third-party app as well, and that link is everything we talked about. It's at 80bitpodsmash.com. Check it out. Mondays at midnight every week our show goes live. New episodes. This is episode 252. So we've done this 251 other times. We're going on 5 years. It's been a while. So
yeah,
there you go. You'd never know that by listening to us banter, cough, and stutter over all of our words.
Hey, and listen, here's the best part. We're 250 something episodes in, and actually they don't hear us do the stuttering and the uhs because I cut most of that out. Huzzah! But it totally happens, and I'll leave the next several uhs in here as I stutter through this next part where I go I'm still proud of the fact that we talk about poop even 250 episodes into the show. So, yay. Good
Yay.
on us.
Poop. Episode 0. Go check it out. It was a great conversation about poop.
Good one. It was a good one. All right, cool. All right. So the Streisand Effect is our topic today. It is a very well documented social effect. I would call it larger social effect. It is named after such a relatively recent figure in history because, quite frankly, I'm not quite sure the Streisand Effect could happen at the same level as it does now without the internet. But I'm sure you could pull examples of things that are at least Streisand adjacent pre-internet. So let's talk about the bottom line of what the Streisand Effect is. It's probably best to describe why it's named after Barbra Streisand first. So, I probably should have had the actual details up. But
2003, Barbra Streisand sued a photographer, Kenneth Adelman, and Pictopia.com for violation of privacy. The $50 million lawsuit endeavored to remove an aerial photograph of Streisand's mansion from the publicly available collection of 12,000 California coastline photographs. Adelman photographed the beachfront property to document the coastal erosion as part of the California Coastal Records Project, which was intended to influence government policymakers. Before Streisand filed her lawsuit, image 3,850 had been downloaded from Adelman's website only 6 times. 2 of those downloads were by Streisand's attorneys. As a result of the case, public knowledge of the picture increased greatly, and more than 420,000 people visited the site over the following month. The lawsuit was dismissed, and Streisand was ordered to pay Adelman's legal fees, which amounted to $155K.
Yeah. So basically, the Streisand Effect is like the Uno reverse card of lawsuits. It doesn't have to be lawsuits, but it could be. It's PR. It's the Uno reverse card of PR, where basically what's happening here, if you didn't catch the narrative of what's happening in Termite's wonderful description of details. The bottom line is the dude went and was taking he was using a drone to take aerial photographs of or a plane. I don't know the exact details, but he was taking pictures of the coastline because he was trying to document erosion. It was totally a environmentalist thing. And again, her beach house or whatever, her property or mansion is built on the coastline. So part and parcel of documenting the coastline was taking a picture of this house. Well, he posted it on the site, and I guess the lawyers found it and were like, how dare you take that down and pay us $50 million in damages. It's the same kind of it's like a DMAC takedown. It's kind of right, where it's she's claiming this is her private property and you can't just post pictures of it. Even though the point wasn't to be he wasn't some paparazzo or whatever. That's what it was like. They're going after him like he was a paparazzo, when in reality he was doing very important environmental work and had, I guess, been authorized to do so. But it's comical, there's private, right? Here. The outcome is private. There's definitely certainly some gray area here as to well, okay, but even if he's doing important work, does he have the right to someone's private, take pictures of someone's private property? I'm not sure. It's definitely morally gray, but the problem is where it gets to levels like you said of comical comeuppance is it's punching down. It's this big. Barbra Streisand doesn't need $50 million from some dude. It was so some random dude who's doing, again, important work. Whether his ends justify the means or not doesn't change the fact that the dude is small potatoes, and they went after him ruthlessly. Where the Streisand Effect comes into play is the dude either went to the media. I don't know if he went to the media or posted it on the nascent internet at the time. But the story got out, and it was the story getting out of Barbra Streisand's lawyers are going after some random dude who's just an environmentalist trying to document erosion. That's absurd. And so the final effect is, again, the picture had been downloaded 6 times. Because again, it wasn't supposed to be a big deal. It was supposed to be documented evidence for a thing, and then a third of those downloads were from Streisand's lawyers themselves, and then 420,000 downloads later that would have never happened had Streisand not gotten involved or her lawyers not gotten involved. So therefore, therein lies the Streisand Effect, right? Is you, by trying to silence, censor, or otherwise control the PR narrative, you actually draw attention to it and the narrative gets out of control. That is essentially the Streisand Effect summed up. Is had you not interfered, it never would have been a big problem, like a big deal in the first place. But because you decided to go hard, it's almost always when a bigger organization punches down on a smaller person or organization that it becomes a big deal.
I like
almost. It's not always that, and we'll get into some of the like nuanced versions of the Streisand Effect as they relate to video games here. But so what does then, like, you may be asking, okay, well, what is Barbra Streisand's beachfront property and erosion and none of that has anything to do with video games? What does the Streisand Effect have anything to do with video games at all?
Oh,
you want to take it from
my
here?
Goodness, there's so many examples.
Well, not getting into the examples yet. Like, how can this be applied to video games?
Yeah, it's hard to actually talk about without like revealing the veil or throwing back the veil on one of the examples. But it's whenever like a video game company says something or has a stance or does something that seems benign or like a PR move to cover something up, but in consequence actually exposes the thing to a wide audience and tons and tons of extra backlash or grief or drama or whatever you want to call it. And I mean, we've had so many examples of this, but
it is,
I guess
and we're going to get into them. But there's like, I mean, it's things like anytime they try to silence or control the narrative, right? Like, and that it's always happening in the video game industry, right? You've got review embargoes, you've got the DMAC takedowns or whatever, the digital media. You know, in the world of YouTube and content creators, it's like they do something that the company doesn't like, then the company tries to censor it, but that act of trying to censor it actually brings more attention to it, right? Like, we live in a world where everyone, especially the big people, are scrutinized every single move, every single moment. And like, it doesn't take an idiot. And then more importantly, we're living in a world where like people jump on narratives in order to like take down those big guys, right? Like, we live in sort of a call out culture, and for better or for worse, right? Like, in some cases, it's really important work that those people do. So I by no means am saying that like it's a bad thing, but there is sort of a like, hey, you guys need to actually be paying attention to the moves you make. And again, the video game industry is so bad at doing this, right? Like, they're so bad at sort of like this idea of like responsibility and behaving responsibly towards like people and trying to control things that like, yeah, it's definitely a rife with examples, right? But I would say that like, again, if you're talking in generalities, it's almost always things like we're trying to prevent you from seeing either what we're about to release or we're trying to like protect our IP too aggressively. I mean,
that's
Nintendo
why I mentioned
is pretty
PR.
guilty of this too.
Yeah, Nintendo
exactly.
really is. Yeah,
it's almost always has to do with either PR or IP or whatever, but it's
PR is public relations, and they're the group of people that like are public facing. So if a company is making decisions, business decisions, trying to hide things or trying to do things that are internal, hold things to the chest, they relinquish information to PR that they then release to the press, to the media, so that people like you and I and the audience can read and consume. That's PR. IP is intellectual property.
PR is there to make it so that like if they do something that they know will be unpopular, PR entirely exists to basically make it so that like, nope, this is palatable so we won't lose business. PR is damage control for all intents and purposes when it comes to like company decisions. That's not entirely just that, but it is still like, right. That's like, it's Inception. So carry on. IP.
IP is intellectual property. It's a piece of content that is owned, a piece of intellectual property owned by a company. So like Zelda is an IP exclusively owned by Nintendo. And that's one example of it. So that's what we mean.
Right.
By
you can't actually
IP.
blame companies too much for trying to protect their IP, right? Because in a way, it's a different form of PR. It's like by like trying to claim, you know, in the worst cases, by trying to plagiarize and claim this as your own, you're at risk of like presenting a product or something, presenting our work in a light that we don't want to be associated with, right? And even in the cases of like people doing good covers and stuff like that, right? It's still at the end of the day is like, no, we need to be able to control what our art is as far as the world consumes it. But there's a fine line, right? Like at what point is like, okay, yeah, so like Zelda's music is iconic now. It's more than just Nintendo's business product. It is something that lives and breathes in the minds and hearts of people that enjoy it. And those people should have the right to like make covers of it without being aggressively trying to be taken down by, you know, with YouTube, because right, like there's sort of an aspect of like art belongs to all of us. even though you own the IP and profit off of it. Like, calm down, right? Like, there's laws for covers for this reason, right? Because like we have, as humans, have decided it's right and just for us to like be able to produce the things we love.
Yeah.
As long as we do it with our voices and our musical talent, and we're not trying to replicate it one to one. Yeah,
I know,
so
I know there's like, side note, there's like the whole like Twitch live stream. You try to live stream an event, like say like Jeff Keighley's latest Summer Game Fest thing or Microsoft Bethesda showcase, and you try to live stream it to your Twitch channel. You want to export that video to your YouTube VOD, video on demand, and you can't because of DMCA, like copyright laws. That anything that's completely copyrighted music that happens during your stream, you just boom, you don't have any profit for that. You're completely devoid of money, and that's a livelihood for a lot of people. That's completely beside the point of what a Streisand effect is.
Absolutely, yeah, but it's you know, again, when it becomes a Streisand effect, is like sometimes they get too aggressive, sometimes they overstep, and when they do, it's almost not always, but it's almost always given attention, and it becomes a bigger deal, and that's kind of the Streisand effect, and it just happens so much. Yeah. But we're gonna jump into some of the bigger examples, some of the ways where this like you know, was juicy, and then we have a couple of examples of it where it became something that was like kind of weird or kind of gross, or like, you know, not actually, you know, we like to think of this thing as like the poor man's justice, right? Like if we can't actually get justice, then sometimes the Streisand effect will do. And in most cases, yeah, it's always fun to see the big guys get their comeuppance for doing something crappy. But there's like at least one or two examples here where I'm like, oh yeah, no, like that shouldn't have been done. Like that shouldn't have happened at all, and the whole situation is uncomfortable. But we'll get into that. The one that we want to launch into first, the one that was probably one of the better, like the one that probably inspired this was, of course, you know, we were here and live for this, and we did tons of episodes on it. But the Activision Blizzard incident involving Blitzchung back in 2018, end of 2018, I think beginning of 2019, followed very shortly by Diablo Immortal. It was kind of a 1-2 punch of like, yeah, Diablo Immortal. So let's talk about the Blitzchung one first, because what happened here was like quintessential Streisand effect. It was this this esports player named Blitzchung from China. Or was he from Hong Kong? I don't know, but like, you know, obviously Hong Kong.
He's from Hong Kong. Yeah,
he was from Hong Kong. Yeah, so he had held up a sign during one of his games that said "Liberate Hong Kong," and of course that like is super like offensive to the Chinese government. And so Activision Blizzard, wanting to, you know, get money from the Chinese government for publishing their games over there, they immediately like harshly not only took it down, but like banned him from the competition. It was like they came down with the hammer. And of course, like hundreds of people watching, right? Like they randomly just pulled him from the competition, where like and it came right after his like thing, right? Like it wasn't even that it was something that needed to be, our eyes were already on this entire situation. It wasn't something where eyes had to be drawn to it, but like it blew up, right? It blew up in their faces. I mean, it became something where it's like no one would have noticed, no one but like a couple hundred, maybe a couple thousand people who watched this esport would have seen it, and fewer people would have actually cared.
Right.
And yet, because the Chinese government felt threatened by, you know, a single small ink potatoes, you know, streamer and esports player from Hong Kong, no, we had to make the biggest deal out of it. And it became it dominated the news cycle, at least in the video game industry, for weeks and weeks, and was one of the biggest first disillusionments towards Blizzard in particular, the Blizzard side of Activision Blizzard. It was one of those like, the veil has been ripped. You now have shown us what and who you are as a company.
Mm-hmm.
And here we are.
Yay, here we are. It was the beginning of our Blizzard boycotts, and it was an extreme controversy. Yep. And you talk about like, what could they have done to avoid the Streisand effect in this situation? Would be to do nothing.
That's almost always what the Streisand effect is, right?
Yeah,
the point is
nothing.
Like, don't just like take your licks or whatever. And like, what was China gonna really do? Quite frankly, was China gonna ban them for this? Like, after all the money that's been made between China and Activision Blizzard over the last, like, both entities have profited greatly from this partnership. Now, China would have slapped them on the wrist, maybe banned their game for couple months, right? And then like, no harm, no foul. Like, they would have gotten over it, right? So it's just kind
if they would have like published the video, it was a Grandmasters tournament, so it wasn't just an esports event. It was
it was like a big deal.
It was like the Super Bowl of Hearthstone. Like it's a big deal to Hearthstone esports events. And if there was any videos recorded and then republished, if Blizzard would have just edited the video out to remove the protests and quietly published those videos for like non-live audiences, then maybe there would be like a few flare-ups of people who actually recorded the protest.
Yeah,
so
it would have been a little loud, but it wouldn't have been.
This is all a big giant hypothetical of like what Blizzard could have done to avoid the Streisand effect. I'm so glad that they did the stupid thing that they did.
They banned him. They banned him.
I'm glad that happened because it exposed Activision and Bobby Kotick for what they are, and the resulting protests and the boycotts and the stuff that happened as a result. The awareness are all good things because we've held Blizzard's feet to the fire. And we'll see what happens now.
It hasn't let up, and it hasn't let up, and yet they still make so much stinking money. Anyways, another example of this, I think a smaller example was Diablo Immortal, but it was this is basically what happened here was sort of the the is this an out of season April Fool's joke, and the sort of wrapped up with the do you not have phones, right? Like it was this whole thing where it was like they unveiled Diablo Immortal. It didn't go over well. If they had just sort of like, okay, it didn't go over well, we'll let the product speak for itself. But no, they felt the need to like defend it in front of people. So this is a circumstance where like they're not trying to silence, they're not trying to take down, but they're like overly trying to convince people. It's like they were caught with their. It's like, you know, sometimes when you're presenting something, you kind of just like have got to trust it for what it is. You know what I mean? Like had they, again, talking about what they could have done differently, had they just sort of like, hey, we're releasing a Diablo mobile game, and then like people would have been like, that's stupid, this is awful. Like, why would you do this? And they would have said, it's what we're doing. Get over it, right? Like, kind of not even get over it, but just like, you know, it's what we're doing, right? This is what we're choosing. We believe in this product. Had they just sort of towed that line and not tried to sit there and get catty with their player base, it would have gone differently. But no, they had a whole Q&A, and someone was like, is this an out-of-season April Fool's joke? And then there was the, do you not have phones? And they fell for it, right? They fell for it. And then their terrible responses, their terrible attempt at damage control, Streisand affected on them hard, and it just became, again, a meme for months and months. So, and the game's out now, and the product speaks for itself, and it's exactly what everybody thought it was: a shameless cash grab. Shameless cash grab. Yeah. So cool. But pivoting it away from Activision Blizzard, although now, but you know, in hindsight, talking about their parent company, Xbox was guilty of this with a kind of very similar situation with when they announced that they were going to have I think it was regarding the disc tray, or maybe it was the always online connectivity that they were planning with the Xbox One. But there's a famous line from one of the, like when they first unveiled it, there was a famous line, again, similar in a Q&A session or an interview. There was a line where one of the developers was like, if you don't like it, buy an Xbox 360. And it's like, right? Like that then became the mantra, like, right? Like, oh, Xbox is telling you to not buy the new console, buy the old one instead, right? That's great. You know, so it's like, again, it's an attempt at like egos and damage control and just like, you know, it's like, it's not the most cut and dry as like the Blitzchung incident, but it's still very much like Streisand adjacent, where it's like, you didn't need to say that. You just need to say this is the, you know, what we're going with forward. And honestly, like, the funny thing is we've talked about this, right? Xbox was 100% right about what gaming would look like. And, you know, now it's like, of course, everything's always online. Of course, like this whole idea, we may not love it, but it's reality. So had they just like, again, put their heads down and just done the thing, then, you know, we might have gone over differently. But now if they had to draw attention to it, and then again, it's like this, it's not necessarily this single line or this single moment, but it's like this is indicative of the attitude Xbox had that made them lose the console war over the last 10 years.
It's very analogous. Crazy. Sorry, side note.
Yeah.
Jackie T, I think is his name. Oh my gosh. What is his name from Sony, who was like, oh, you're just going to buy the PS3 anyway. I don't care.
Right. Yeah.
If you know, you know. I'm sorry for folks who might not know what I'm talking about, but you can Google like the old guard at Sony during the PS3 era when the PS3 was announced. It was they were so cocky off the heels of their PS2 that they were like, oh, if you don't like the PS3 price, whatever, you're gonna buy it anyway because it's PlayStation. And it's like, what? Like, it wasn't really a Streisand effect, but yeah, Microsoft was really off the mark. And I'm looking at the quote now. The guy Matrick is in E3 of 2013 in an interview with Jeff Keighley, of all folks.
That was what it was. That's right.
Some of the advantages that you get of having a box that is designed to use an online state, so that to me is the future of proof choice. I think people could have arguably gone the other way if we didn't do it. And fortunately, we have a product for people who aren't able to get some form of connectivity. It's called the Xbox 360. Boom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I get what you were saying, but also it's just like, you're trying to sell the new console. Don't tell them to go buy the old console.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. All right. Another great. This one's much more cut and dry. Streisand Effect, like very clear.
I don't know this one
on
at all.
some. You don't know this one at all. Yeah, I don't know the game, but I do know the Cynical Brit. So right, Cynical Brit or Total Biscuit. He was a content creator on YouTube. He is unfortunately posthumously appreciated because he died a few years ago. It was for his fans and for a lot of like the YouTube community. He was a big kind of like pillar of content creation in the early 2000s and or 2010s and stuff. So yeah, he died a few years ago and very sad. So rest in peace, Total Biscuit. But there's this game, yeah. So he reviewed a lot of like indie games and stuff, right? He was really big and a big part of that community and scene. He interviewed, or he was doing a first impression of a game called Day One, Gary's Incident. I mean, first impressions, right? Like this is something that's like, this is super like important in the video game industry, is for people to be able to give their unfiltered first impressions without suffering consequences, right? Like that should be that's no brainer, right? Like you wouldn't threaten legal action against your friend for saying that, like, oh, I hated God of War, it was crap, right? Like, oh, I'm gonna sue you. Like, that's ridiculous. And this is like analogous to this, right? Basically what happened is, yeah, like he did an impression and this was his statement. Midway through the video, he said the game had a lot of potential but was poorly executed. That's not the worst criticism in the world, right? He's saying, oh, I see a lot of what you were trying to do here, and execution is execution, right? Like saying that somebody had poor execution is basically just saying, like, you know what, like try it again, practice, keep practicing, keep at it. You got a good start here, right? That's not the worst criticism he could have given. However, the developer, Wild Game Studios, didn't like the criticism. So this is the classic DMCA video. It's like takedown, right? Like the YouTube, they use the YouTube copyright takedown feature and they removed the video. And their statement was, Total Biscuit has no right to make advertising revenues with our license. Yeah, there's a reason. I mean, YouTube alone was basically responsible for a lot of laws related to how this all works, right? And the basic idea is called fair use, right? Like, I'm not trying to claim that your work is mine. Quite the opposite. I'm a critic. I'm trying to analyze your work. I'm never claiming it's my work, my license, right? Like, I'm simply giving my impressions. This is literally what it is. And they DMCA takedown. Anyways, it blew up in their face is what it boiled down to. There's a reason why you probably never heard of Wild Game Studios, because they, basically here's the Streisand Effect in numbers though. You want to know. So the first impression video before removal was 150,000 views. The first impression video after YouTube restored it, after the takedown copyright, over 1 million. This is back in like, this was a while ago. So like 1 million views is still was still a pretty big deal back then. And then the video after the video about the removal, so the video he did talking about the removal later, 5 million and counting.
Of course, ridiculous. There it is. There's the Streisand Effect.
Ridiculous. Yep. And then it happened to him again. It happened to him again with a game called Guise of the Wolf, and he made 2 videos displaying how it was horribly bug-ridden, poorly designed. And the developer also made a copyright incident, and the copyright for this time, they said they wanted to remove the video and also erase his channel, with claims of our company is a lot bigger than your little YouTube channel. And it says this ended about as well for them as it did for the developer of Gary's Incident.
Wow.
Oh man. So I mean, this is such a great example because it's like it has everything to do with like, this happened at a time where influencers weren't really yet a thing in the way they are now. And like it's incidents like this that are like, yeah, the Streisand Effect in this case had a direct impact on the formation of what we now call influencers, right? Because here you have Total Biscuit, and his influence literally was created by this effect, right? Like 1 million views, then 5 million additional views, right? Like in a way, they built his channel for him and gave him the influence in an effort to take his influence away.
There you go.
Streisand Effect. Yeah. Beautiful example.
This is a positive one, though. Because, like, look what it did.
Yeah,
right?
No, this is great. Well, yes and no, right? Because, like, I have a mixed feelings about now where influencer culture is, right? Like, influencer culture is now at a point where it's like it's the worst version of it, right? Like now, in an attempt to appease influencers, they try to design games that appease to them because of the amount of money they stand to possibly gain from it, as opposed to they will throw us, the average players, under the bus in order to appease them.
Yeah.
Right. So it is a like, oh yeah, no. I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, in this example, you have the good guy and the bad guy. It's clear cut. It's wonderful. But on the other hand, the effects of it are still being felt today, and I'm torn about them. So it's fascinating. So, do you know about this one, the Beyond Two Souls? Do you want to talk about this one? Do you know it?
No, Beyond Two Souls. Right. I know Beyond Two Souls is, but I don't know what the shower scene is vaguely familiar. I remember there being a controversy about it.
Yeah, this is Oh, this one's tough, man, because I don't feel good about this one. There's no, actually, and quite frankly, the people who were essentially the actual like Streisand Effect. In this case, it's the powerful people who actually were probably victimized by this, which sucks, right? So Elliot Page at the time was Ellen Page. He was a performer in Beyond Two Souls. He, like, his voice, his face in this game, right, lended his appearance and voice, like, right, like in the same way that Hayden Panettiere's in, what do you call it? The game Until Dawn, right? Yep. Until Dawn. It's Hayden Panettiere and Rami Malek, right? Like they're like that's now video game. That is a form of video game performance where it's like your likeness, your voice, everything. This is Elliot Page was in that, and there was a shower scene, and there was like actual nudity. They rendered it like an anatomically correct person of Elliot Page's body type would look, right? So it was. It's that weird blurred line of like they weren't obviously rendering his body, but they like rendered a body that looked like his body, and it was enough for creeps on the internet to like start downloading it. Well, it wasn't really that like much downloaded. I think the numbers are here on this thing here.
You've done your research.
I have. Well, there's a nice list on TV. If you want to know where I'm pulling, tvtropes.com. I didn't pull everything from tvtropes.com, but tvtropes.com has a great list and for a whole bunch of different media, and they have a whole list for video games here. So how it worked was like the picture did. So obviously people uploaded pictures and videos, and it did start to get kind of a modest number of views from creeps, but Sony attempted to have the pictures scrubbed. Elliot Page actually got in on it too and threatened legal action against Sony. So Elliot Page threatened Sony, rightfully so, right? Like this is kind of messed up. It's a little weird. He probably didn't consent exactly to that. So he threatened legal action. He's in this case, as far as I'm concerned, a victim and rightfully deserved to do what he did. Sony, of course, then rightfully should have tried to have it scrubbed, but it was because they had to have it scrubbed. The news story started to spread, and the interest in the material, it blew up, right? It was everywhere. It's like you probably can still find it to this day. It's ridiculous. So
the game was patched to remove those scenes?
I don't know about the game itself, but like Sony started throwing takedown requests trying to have
on the videos
it removed on the videos online. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So apparently in the emails themselves from 2015 got leaked between Elliot Page and Sony. And he said that he had never participated in a full body scan for the game. So it's such a weird one. And this is the one that I was like, in this case, I side with Elliot Page. I side with the powerful person who got screwed over and the powerful company that like made a mistake and was trying to correct it. And yet in this case, the Streisand Effect only benefited the like creeps out there, right? Who would be so gross as to be like, oh yeah, let me see. Like, I don't feel good about this one. I don't feel good about this one, guys. I feel good about it as a great example. I don't feel good about it as like, this is such a yucky one as far as like, I don't have anything else to say other than I feel weird reading about it. What are your thoughts on this one?
Did you mention that the images were from an illegally hacked console? That this was not...
no, I hadn't mentioned that. Yeah, okay.
It's not actually their body. It would represent, or I would really appreciate if you take the story down to end this cycle of discussion around this, was a quote from Sony. So apparently it was like, it's not in the main game.
Yeah, well, but like, how would they still?
So what happened is they like, pulled it from
they designed
a leaked copy and then put them all online. So like, if I go buy a copy of Beyond Two Souls for PS3 right now and put it in there and play it, the shower scenes are not there. So they never were in the main game. They never were in the actual final product.
The designers made it, right? It still says something that the designers made it, right?
It just frames the scope of this, and it makes Sony look even worse.
Yeah.
Kind of. Maybe it's a little better for Sony, but it really is it's an assault on the toxicity internet culture more than anything else. Like, really, folks, you're going to go find an illegally hacked version of the game and pull the scene and do the thing. Streisand Effect.
Yeah,
no one would have
absolutely.
known if Sony, if this was never like made big because it was such a, it was so little. Yeah, like
right, but it's not one. It's not
gross.
a situation. And what's weird about it is not a situation where it's like, oh, Sony messed up and now we get to stick it to them. It's like Sony messed up, but they were actually trying to fix the mistake that hurt someone.
Yeah.
And it made it worse. And now the like Streisand perpetrators or whatever, right? The people who actually like advanced it. Yep. Now they're, in fact, the news stories that probably spread it in the first place, they're probably complicit. This is one of those things where it's like, okay, this is journalism. This is the worst part. This is the dark side of journalism, is where it actually contributes to this crap. Let's turn up the positivity and talk about a funnier version of this kind of same thing. I want to talk about Smash Ultimate, when they revealed Terry Bogard from Fatal Fury. That's what it's called, right? Yeah. The game. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a character in there called Mai. Nothing to do with this release. Mai was not. It was Terry Bogard. Terry Bogard from Fatal Fury. That's all you had to say. Is he's coming. He's coming. He's going to be, and there's going to be some scenes with other characters from it in his level. And Sakurai went out of his way to say, oh, this one character, Mai, I think her name is like Miss something or other. I forget her name. Anyways, he's a character from Fatal Fury who is a very very scantily clad character woman, and with disproportionate body anyway, doesn't matter what his line was. Mai's not going to be in it because she's not suitable content for good little girls and boys. Is Sakurai's line. And it's like, everybody who didn't know what this character was immediately Google searched it when they would have normally never Google searched it, and probably including many minors who are little boys and girls. Okay, well, I've got a phone. I can search. What is this character? Ridiculous. There was no reason to bring it up at all. It came out of nowhere and it blew up on I believe that like the day of the Terry Bogard announcement, I believe there was like a there were equal numbers of searches for that character versus Terry Bogard himself. It's like, so it's a sillier version of something that's also kind of gross when you think about it, but like at the same time, it's a really funny example because it's such an example of like, you didn't have to say anything at all. You could have just like ignored it. People might have been like, where's Mai? But it would have been such a small, tiny controversy.
Tiny little
thing. Yeah, exactly. So,
oh my gosh, that's funny. Yeah. Like, there's even a little snippet from a Kotaku article, like how just that whole act, that Streisand Effect, raises concerns about developer buying into the way society sexualizes human bodies, women being objectified and being a collection of separate parts rather than a whole person.
Oh, it's super problematic when you break it down. It says a lot about Sakurai, unfortunately, but like
discrimination against trans and non-binary folks, like the whole like the web just keeps going, and so Sakurai invoked all of that in that one.
He did, and like he wasn't intending to. He wasn't intending to. I think he was trying to make a joke, like cut the man some slack. It was just bad taste, right? And so like I'm not gonna sit there and like rake the man over the coals and be like transphobe, right? That's the worst version of like that kind of culture. What I am gonna say is though, it was stupid, and it's I think I mean you're not wrong in saying that. Like it's still probably like it says something a lot about his mindset and his attitudes, because at the end of the day, our humor does reveal a lot about us, even if we don't think it does. So I will assent to that fact, but at the end of the day, like I'm not going to sit here and say Sakurai is a terrible person, nor am I going to cancel him because of what ultimately boiled down to a silly joke. And it works for us because it's such a great example. So I want to hit two more, right? If we have time for two more, and then we can talk about some of the fallout of this, right? I want to talk about PT because I love PT. Of course. Silent Hills PT, we've talked about it at length as probably one of the single greatest pieces of like non-content that's ever come out for a video game, right? It was supposed to be a playable trailer. It was supposed to hype up Silent Hills being made by Kojima and Konami partnership.
And Del Toro.
Right, and Del Toro, right, yes. And it fell apart. And so all that was left of this, what could have been a legendary game, was just this playable trailer. And then Konami pulled it from the store and tried to pull it from consoles, right? Or they at least pulled it from the store. They made it so like you can't get access to it. And as a result of that, now PT has become a legend. It's like they took a thing that was like, if they just left it on the store, like, so what, people would have downloaded it and been like, wow, that's cool, and then deleted it, and then maybe re-downloaded it a few years later, whatever. It could still be on there today, and it wouldn't be like this legendary thing necessarily, but because it was like, now consoles with PT downloaded on them sell for like thousands of dollars.
Yeah, I
because
got
you
two
can't
of them.
get it anywhere else. Yeah, exactly. So it's slightly different, but it is a fascinating like example of like,
and then they
something...
made insult to injury worse by someone trying it on PS5, and then they publicly announced that like PT's not compatible with PS5 at all. So the backwards compatibility with PS4 titles on PS5,
sure, yeah,
you can't, like, even if you used an external hard drive, put PT on it, and plugged it into your PS5, like, it wouldn't work. And so because people made that known, there was a statement about it, like, added even more attention to the fact that this game had already been delisted. Like, obviously,
it's
Konami
like
and the fallout with Kojima.
It's just like, they can't stop. It will never stop coming out. It'll never stop coming out. And more importantly, then it's funny too, because they enabled, in an effort to like, I don't know what, try to get people to not profit off of their work. Now people are profiting off of their work. That's why it's the great Streisand effect, is because now people are like, great, I'm going to sit on this legendary game that you can't experience anywhere else but my console that I just refuse to remove it from, and now I can sell that console. I mean, 10 years from now, those things are going to go for like possibly like millions of dollars for someone's collection, right? Just to have PT, right? And all that Konami has to do to stop it is release it on the PlayStation Store for $3.
Yeah, they make money on it.
Whatever, Konami would make money off of it. It's insane, man.
I'm sure Kojima would want royalties, so Kojima would need to make money, and they would. Konami and Kojima don't want to work together, so it wouldn't work. Never happened.
So the last one I want to talk about, I mean, I would love to talk about The Last of Us Part 2, the leaks, and how, I mean, we kind of already hit on it, but what I think is a more fun The Last of Us Part 2 story is there was this content creating couple called Girlfriend Games or something like that. You should go check them out. I actually really like their videos. Basically, he edits the videos and then she narrates them, and together they basically talk about how she's reviewing games in a way that's like, it's not, you should buy this game. It's, you, the girlfriend, should tell your boyfriend to buy this game because it's good, it's fun to watch, right? Like, that's her entire premise of her show. Really cute, really adorable, like, premise there. I only discovered them because of Last of Us Part 2, because they put together a very, very thoughtful review of The Last of Us Part 2, where they really, really, I mean, like, they were like, this is incredible. And this, I I had already thought highly of Last of Us Part 2, but I watched that video and I was like, yeah, I'm not crazy. I actually, like, they're hitting on all the kind of things that I thought of, and also opening my eyes to things I hadn't thought of. Like, what a really insightful video on The Last of Us Part 2. Girlfriend Gamers at the time, I think, had like only a couple 100,000 followers. Maybe they weren't like tiny, but they were modest, right? Well, this video ended up becoming like blowing up to like 5 million views because people were like the crazy people on the internet started just like trying to rip it apart and just like get her, like, they were trying to get it canceled. They were just like, and it was traumatizing. I think they like legally, like, they're not threatening, they're like like sending her death threats and stuff. And they just like, they posted a follow-up video that was like, we're getting death threats for our video that we posted on The Last of Us Part 2. Like, people are like actually being like crazy about this. And both videos ended up blowing up after that, both the review and the follow-up video. And it was crazy. It was nuts. But here's the Streisand effect in play, right? It's in an effort to like silence someone. This is one that's kind of a weird reverse, which is why I wanted to bring it up. It's like, instead of like a big, huge organization trying to take down a small content creator, what you have is a relatively small content creator trying to be taken down by this like group of rabid toxic fans. So it's not one organization, it's like a bunch of individuals who are like a toxic community online, and they have been since The Last of Us Part 2's leaks came out in the first place. And so they had this whole like subculture going where it was just like cool to hate on Last of Us Part 2. And then this content creator releases a thoughtful video that probably made them think about their stance. And they're like, how dare you make me think? You're wrong. You're awful. You suck. You should die, whatever. And then boom, they blow up and they get a huge following and support. And they, again, these people who were meant to try to silence, sought out to try to silence this content creator, instead made them like something great. And that's beautiful. I love that example. It's one of my favorites of just like, yay, the little guy.
Getting a positive from Streisand Effect.
Right, exactly.
Which is a great
So,
segue into the next question.
yes. So, do you want to read the next question? Go
Why
ahead, 'cause
is
I've
it
been talking
important
a
for
lot.
video game companies to understand the Streisand effect and learn how to mitigate it? How dangerous is the Streisand effect to business in the video game industry? Big deal or not? So I did some research prior to this episode because I am
Sure.
actually very ignorant over the Streisand effect and don't catch it when it happens until someone tells me it's happening. And so, like, I'm
Right.
not really mindful of it as it's going on, which is why I've relatively been more quiet this episode than usual. That's fine. So, yeah, I found a quote from 2012, which is a while ago. So I don't know where this person is or what the company is, but there was a company called Mindshare, and the social media head, his name is Paul Armstrong, said this, and I quote him saying, "People have an innate inquisitiveness when this is mixed with fear of missing out, feeling something is being hidden from them or that someone is overreacting to something. It can cause individuals to react in undesired or mischievous ways that others then support. Mix this combination with a natural dislike for censorship, and brands or individuals can have a recipe for disaster on their hands. What is the ethical way for companies to respond to issues, controversies, and challenges that would not result in the Streisand effect occurring in the first place?" So what I want to highlight here is that when the Streisand effect happens, and in summary with this quote, someone else, being attracted to the thing that's supposed to be hidden, right? So like you and I, for example, the company says and does something stupid. You and I are like, oh, well, that doing something stupid attracted our attention to it in their attempt to hide it. And then suddenly you and I start a mass following of this new idea. It's invigorated, it's instilled. The embers of that flame are our FOMO, or something that we're missing out on.
People don't have to love the thing. They just have to love the fact that it's all about the narrative, right? It's a David and Goliath kind of thing, right? It's like, I don't have to love, I don't have to love The Last of Us Part 2 or Beyond Two Souls or whatever, right? And yet I can get behind one side or another. I'd never watched Total Biscuit, but I love the idea that Total Biscuit brought down game studios because they tried to censor him, right? Like, that's awesome. Twice. He brought it down twice. Two game studios I've never heard of before because... so that's the point there, is like, people love that sort of narrative, even if they don't care about the actual thing being censored in the first place. And we also just hate the idea that people would try to silence someone else's voice. Like, that's very Western, and thank God it is, right? Like, that's one of my favorite things about Western culture, is that we sit there and say, I don't care about what he's saying. I care that you're trying to tell him to stop saying it.
Right.
Like, that's such a great rebellious aspect of American culture, is like, hey, listen, I don't have to like what you say, but I'll defend to my death your right to say it, right? Like, that's sort of it's a cheeky, cheesy version of it, but I've always resonated with it because it very much is like, yo, you shut up. You shut up. You go back to your corner and you shut up, because like, he's allowed to say whatever he wants. How dare you try to stop him from saying whatever it, like, you are a child if you are offended by someone else's words or ideas. Like, get out of here and go back to your corner. There are some times I still agree where, like, it is necessary to say, hey, no, you need to stop saying that, bro. You need to stop, right?
Yeah.
There are certain times where it is, I'm not sitting here saying that like everyone should be always allowed to say what they want. Hate speech that incites violence, all of that should be rightfully censored, because it can lead to people taking it further than it needs to go. But we are a far cry from that when someone's saying like, hey, here's my opinion on a video game, right? Like, we are a far cry from that when someone's saying, hey, I believe in this cause, and I believe that this and the only reason you have to silence me is because you stand to lose money, right? Like, that's unacceptable. So sorry, I didn't want to interrupt.
No, I was about to have the same caveat. Like, hate speech is not okay. That's not fine.
Right.
But when it comes to like Blizzard trying to censor Blitzchung, and it's just like creating this crazy loud wave of people protesting Blizzard, rightfully so. I said earlier in this episode that was a good thing, and I'm glad that Streisand Effect example had happened. And that's what this is. It's like, it's not really it is a dislike for censorship. It's like, why would Blizzard try to censor themselves on a topic that has humanity at its core just to cater to the Chinese market to get money?
Because you don't care about humanity, you care about money, right? Like, that's exactly what it is.
Yep.
And everybody loves when crooks get caught red-handed, right? Like, there's what's great about the Streisand Effect, again, it's not without its pitfalls, and I hope we highlighted that. I hope we highlighted at least a couple of examples in here that we were both like, that kind of should never have been a thing in the first place, right? But in most examples, the Streisand effect plays on like a couple of things, right? It's like you know, the David versus Goliath, right? The big guy trying to crush the little guy and the little guy prevailing. It also plays on the idea of like, oh, it's great when bad people get exposed for what they really want. Their motivations are made clear because PR campaigns, PR organizations exist to say, no, we love you. We want to give you what you want. And then we also want to be seen as good people. When the reality is, it's like in most cases, we are dealing here with the most basic form of capitalistic greed.
Yep.
We have to acknowledge that even in the companies we like, even in Sony, even in Microsoft, we have to acknowledge that they don't actually care about you. They care about your money.
Yep.
And you as a consumer can then have a healthy, if you acknowledge that, you can have a healthy relationship with it, right? It is not healthy for us to be like, yay, I love them, they're my family. No. They provide a product or a service you want, and you have every right to step away from that product or service without any offense to your identity.
That is a healthy relationship to have with a brand. No one should ever identify with a brand, ever.
100%.
Ever.
Right. It leads to the stupidest of human behaviors. I'm not even going to say evil. I'm just going to say stupid. Like,
it's
I'm guilty of it. No, I'm guilty of it, which is why, like, I hate when I catch myself in it, where I'm like, when I needlessly criticize an Apple product just because I like, you know, non-Apple products better, right?
But
like that is actually bad behavior.
Side note, little inside baseball, Penguin and Termite talking here about this podcast. 5 years ago, you were very much like identifying against brands. I wouldn't say that you would have identified with any brand, but you are definitely like a hater against companies. And I think you've come a long way, like understanding like different companies and their organizations and like what they do, and like not just hating them blanket.
That's true.
Like even your view of Call of Duty, which you still don't play and you don't like, you used to just completely dismiss. And I feel like even now today, if there was an announcement about a Call of Duty game, you would actually like look at the development studio and look at no, you wouldn't watch it, but you would at least like right, you would like it's a baby step, right? You would actually like approach like what objectively in the video game industry is this company doing with Call of Duty.
A baby step implies that I need to take a bigger step. I think that like I'm probably in the place I need to be in regards to Call of Duty, which is to acknowledge that it makes a lot of money, has a cultural impact and a huge appeal to people, while also sitting there and saying it is still, I think, the worst of what the video game industry has to offer, and yet it confounds me as to how it makes money in the first place. Well, you know what? Tit for tat, you've come a long way in acknowledging that not every single company that you love the most is faultless, blameless, and without their darker tendencies. It's all good. Hey, look, we all have room for growth, and like I said, I'm still guilty of a lot of these behaviors that I claim to say are bad. So it's again, we are all we'll end on that good old Dalinar quote of saying a hypocrite is just a person who's in the process of changing. Thank you, Brandon Sanderson, for your wisdom.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. You didn't get that far into it.
No, I haven't. But I wish the GOP would learn from that. That'd be great. Oh, did I say that out loud?
Sorry. I would say this. I would caveat it. I would caveat that Brandon Sanderson quote by saying that not every hypocrite is a person in the process of change. Some hypocrites are just hypocrisits.
All right. Sweet. Okay.
But hypocrisy can be confused as, right? Like, so sometimes a person changing can be confused as hypocrisy. That's kind of what I think he was going for. Yeah.
So not the GOP. So, they're straight hypocrites.
Still. No, they're just they're moashes. They're moashes.
Cool. Yeah. Gotcha. All right. Yeah. Great.
That's it. We want to hear your thoughts on the Streisand effect. What are some examples we missed? Have you been there for it? Right? Like, were you ever there watching the Streisand effect happen? What are, what we didn't have time to hit on was all the Streisand effects that happen in like the political spheres or in movies or in business. Like, it happens in everything, right? Like, that's what's great about the Streisand effect is like it was named after a washed up movie actress and is like and is yet it applies to everything on the planet. Like, it strikes that chord of like that perfect blend of like the things that get us going as humans. So yeah, we want to hear all of your thoughts about the Streisand effect. And Termite will probably undoubtedly have a fun twist on his prompt here in a second.
I don't know about that. Now I'm on the spot. I don't know what's happening anymore. Tell us about how January 6th is a Streisand effect in action.
It is.
It is.
Streisand Effect.
It is.
The hearings. We have hearings right now.
Yeah,
We're
I
having
know, right?
congressional
Yeah.
hearings because of a real-time Streisand Effect.
Yes, right?
Hey, maybe if you hadn't tried to assault Congress and, start a coup, maybe you would have had a shot at being president again. But no. You don't.
Oh, man.
Teabag.
Please, anyone watching, listening,
I'm going to start calling him Teabag. I probably should edit all that out, but I'm not. I'm leaving at least Teabag in there.
Yeah, you need to leave that all in there. You can tell us all about how Pride Month is a Streisand Effect across every single company who is putting their name and changing it to be the Pride flag and not doing a thing about it over at 80bitpodsmash.com, 80bit podsmash, our landing website for your access to all of our social media platforms: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, Twitch, and Discord. Links across all of our channels are there, as well as our audio feeds from Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts, Google Play. I can't keep this straight, but 80bitpodsmash.com. Give us your thoughts, questions, comments, concerns, and ideas, feedback, and everything else. I would really love to know if someone was in a major video game industry Streisand Effect moment and saw it live. That'd be sweet.
Next week, we're going to talk about, we kind of actually mentioned it on this episode earlier. We talked about how development cycles are getting longer and why is that happening, right? Like, why is it happening, and how can developers, what tools are possibly in the pipeline that may help speed up the process for development? But we're at this place and this point for a reason, and some people are talking about how developers should consider scaling things back in order to change it. So it's a big conversation in the industry. It's a really big deal. I've been really wanting to talk about it for a while, so we're finally going to talk about how, like all, the development cycle has become elongated. Yes, we'll see you then.
We'll see you next week.